Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but it could only be either of those if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. 44208-601-4555. You call us, we'll call you back. Establish a clear line, and remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be down at 0, or I'll have to press swiftly on. You can SMS the show on 447800008066, or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. This being the 21st century, you can even tweet me at comment_presstv. Tonight we're going to deal with a very important subject. Where should the focus be to rid the world of nuclear weapons? There are two reasons for that. My reason is that next week, my own party, Respect, will begin a Ban the Bomb campaign. We say that the whole world should be rid of nuclear weapons, starting with Britain and starting with the Middle East. The Middle East should be a nuclear-free zone. And the second reason is this. I've been ruminating on the logic of the entire world being fixated on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which doesn't have any nuclear weapons, when there are 16,800 nuclear weapons in the world in the hands of other countries. How come the world has been led to the brink of a crisis with Iran, levying sanction after sanction, ostracizing, shunning Iran, when it doesn't have any nuclear weapons, doesn't want any nuclear weapons, has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, is allowing regular inspections by the inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. How come Iran is the focus of all this aggression, all these acts under law of war, because an economic embargo, a quarantine, putting sanctions on people is, legally speaking, an act of war, when all around Iran there are literally thousands of nuclear weapons? Just on Iran's borders or in its neighborhood, never mind in the rest of the world. There are thousands of nuclear weapons in the region, but the most important and significant in this argument of those are the nuclear weapons in the possession of the Zionist state. Now, the lowest figure that I could find for the number of illegally held nuclear weapons held by the Zionist state is 80. But the figure is almost certainly very much more. 25 years ago, Mordechai Vanunu, the whistleblower who worked amongst the nuclear weapons in the Negev desert at Dimona, he told the Sunday Times, then a prestigious world newspaper, that Israel had in excess of 200 nuclear weapons. Now, if that figure is true, and Vanunu had taken pictures, drawings, plans of that nuclear arsenal, if they had in excess of 200 25 years ago, how many nuclear weapons does Israel have today? Now, there are two reasons to be concerned about that. The first is that Israel has a long history of breaking international law, of invading and occupying other people's territories. It has invaded and occupied Egypt. It has invaded and occupied Jordan. It has invaded and occupied Lebanon. It has invaded, occupied, and annexed illegally a part of Syria. So this is, by any standards, a rogue state, a reckless, lawless, lunatic state in possession of maybe hundreds of nuclear weapons. And the second reason for concern is that Israel refuses to sign the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It wouldn't dream of allowing a single inspector ever to inspect their weaponry from the IAEA, from the United Nations, or from anybody at all. So we have a rogue, reckless state in possession of large numbers of nuclear weapons that refuses to regularize them, and there would be no disadvantage for them in doing so. You might argue it would make their security more assured if the world knew for certain how many nuclear weapons they had. There is no reason why they wouldn't sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty if it were not the very real and present suspicion that they are busily adding to their nuclear arsenal, entirely in defiance of international law. But there are many, many others. I've got the list here. The United States, of course, has the biggest nuclear arsenal, 7,315 nuclear weapons. And that's a huge reduction, by the way, on what they used to have. They used to have almost 30,000 nuclear weapons. But these are big, powerful, world-ending, civilization-ending, human race-ending nuclear weapons. And of course, they're spread out all over the globe. Countries like Germany, countries like Turkey are the home to United States nuclear weapons. Others are circling the globe in submarines. Others are permanently on board aircraft that are flying all over the world. The United States has intercontinental ballistic missiles by the thousand. By the thousand. And this, as you might see on our video wall, is a cause, ought to be a cause of real concern, especially when the United States is going around threatening people who don't have nuclear weapons. The US started the global nuclear arms race. It's the only country that has ever used nuclear weapons. It killed 200,000 people in 3 days with 2 nuclear weapons at the end of the Second World War, dropping them, of course, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it did so not for any military purpose, but for the purpose of armed propaganda, to send a message to the world that they should be terrified of the United States. Of course, the then Soviet Union quickly caught up, and it too has a huge number of nuclear weapons. 8,000 warheads. It was the second country to develop nuclear weapons. It has the largest arsenal of any country and is investing heavily in the modernization of its warheads and its delivery system. We here in Britain, bankrupt Britain, that can't even keep its old age pensioners warm in the middle of this austerity winter, has found, miraculously, in an announcement just this week, reported in the New Statesman magazine this week, another £250 million to be spent on our nuclear weapons. That's £250 million that could have been spent on the accident and emergency departments in Britain's hospitals that are breaking apart at the seams. And a crisis, an economic and social crisis, grips Britain, but it still has the money for hundreds upon hundreds of nuclear weapons. France has 300 nuclear weapons. China, 250 nuclear weapons. India, between 90 and 110 nuclear weapons. Pakistan, between 100 and 120 nuclear warheads. Israel, between 80 and 200 plus nuclear weapons. And North Korea has 10 nuclear weapons. That's why the United States will never invade North Korea, and why they did invade Iraq, because Iraq didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, but North Korea does. So, where should we start on this campaign to rid the world of nuclear weapons? Let's hear from Mohammed in Birmingham. Mohammed, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, George.
Welcome, go ahead.
George, I just want to say, like, America doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapons on the basis that it threatens America or the integrity of America. My question to them is, but they also use the basis like because Iran supports Hamas, Hezbollah Tahrir and so forth, Hezbollah, I mean. But my question to the world is, those who support the views of America, like so far in the news and so forth, have they seen any action of terrorism by Iran, like killing people, innocent people, through drone attacks or whatsoever, or is this by America? America is killing people, innocent people, on the basis of suspicion or stating that they support Al-Qaeda. They're having nuclear weapon. My question is, why can't the people other than America or the states other than America have a weapon with them? Israel, who has killed thousands of innocent people, Palestinians in Palestine, is having a nuclear weapon, and nobody could do anything with them. When Iran is doing nothing, why are they saying that Iran shouldn't be having nuclear weapon?
Well, it's a kind of madness. Iran has never invaded or occupied anyone else's territory in centuries, long before the Islamic Revolution, centuries, hundreds of years since Iran invaded or occupied anybody. Iran is not threatening anybody. It has no nuclear weapons. It doesn't want any nuclear weapons. It is theologically, religiously forbidden to acquire nuclear weapons. The late Ayatollah Khomeini set the benchmark for the state's attitude to nuclear weapons. While all these people have thousands, 18,600 nuclear weapons between them. And yet Iran is the whipping boy, while the rest of them are allowed to sit with their nuclear weapons. It's a kind of madness. Thanks, Mohammed, in Birmingham, for that call. We're asking, where should the focus be to rid the world of nuclear weapons? Well, I'm very clear about it. It should start at home, and it should start in the Middle East. The Middle East should be officially, legally, a nuclear weapons-free zone. Shahid's in London. Let's hear what he has to say. Shahid, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, George.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, well, I want to say that basically, like, we have to have a world free of nuclear weapons. First of all, we have to start off with Israel, because Israel has, like, I think, between 100 to 200 nuclear weapons, and it's illegal, and it's illegally held, so they don't have any sort of inspectors come in and checking the facilities and everything.
They wouldn't dream of it, Shahid. They don't even allow a United Nations official to go into Gaza to monitor the mass destruction Israel did in Gaza over the summer.
That's right, George. You know what, yeah? You know, I was going to say something to you, George, yeah, about, I know it's a little bit off the topic, but you know about that attack that happened in France? It was very, very wrong, and in Islam we don't agree with killing innocent people. But we've got to look at the bigger picture, because the whole world is obviously condemning what happened in France, the terrorist attack, that they shouldn't have killed these people. Although we don't have 2 minutes silence for the people, the children, the 500 plus children and women and children that died in Gaza.
No.
We didn't get this condemnation.
Shahid, or the 17 journalists that were killed in Gaza, with press emblazoned across their chests. 17 journalists were killed by Netanyahu, who was then marching in Paris. I've just done the hashtag Ask Galloway on this very subject, was marching in Paris about the murder of these journalists in France.
George, what is this hypocrisy then? All the time they got this hypocrisy. It's like the blood of Muslims is not valuable. It's like we don't remember the Muslim. We don't even, in Syria, we lost count of how many people have died. It's gone plus 200,000. The United Nations have stopped counting how many people have died now. So what kind of hypocrisy is this?
Well, in Nigeria, in the same week, Shahid, in the Borno province of Nigeria, in the very same week as the mass murder in Paris, took place the mass murder of 2,000 people by the group calling itself Boko Haram. One of the 2,000 who was murdered was actually giving birth, was in labor when she was murdered. There's hardly been that about it in the international media. Shahid, if you are anywhere up north, I'm addressing what I think will be an important rally in Centenary Square in Bradford on Saturday evening at 7:30 on exactly this subject of the double standards and the hypocrisy, on the issue of freedom of speech, and of course on the issue of murder and terrorism. Thanks for the call. Saeed's in Birmingham. Saeed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brother George. Thanks for having me. I am Saeed Iraqi, of course. The reason why I want to mention my name is Saeed Iraqi, because I want to tell your viewers how much I have suffered based on chemical and biological weapon when Tony Blair and George W. Bush told us that Iraq has chemical and biological weapon. And I want to tell your viewers to remember you and me when we were crying and screaming peacefully and demonstrating in London that there is no chemical and biological weapon in Iraq. We know who has it. And the second point, very briefly, Brother George, chemical and biological weapon never stopped Soviet Union from collapsing, never stopped American hegemony in Iraq to defeat, as well as in Afghanistan to be defeated. Therefore, my advice, just like South Africa, Israel should give up its nuclear weapon and we can live in peace. Thanks
Saeed,
for having me, Brother George.
very powerful call. Let's deal with what weapons of mass destruction are. They are defined as weapons which are not limited in space and time. In other words, a weapon which is fired at a target, but the effect of that weapon goes far beyond that target and far beyond the here and now. I mentioned the 2 nuclear bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Until this day, 2015, there are children born with genetic defects as a direct result of nuclear weapons dropped 70 years ago. In Vietnam today, there are still children born with hideous deformity as a result of the ocean of chemical weapons that the United States dropped on the people of Vietnam. The United States' use of depleted uranium weapons in Iraq as long ago as 1991 are still producing hideous cancers and deformations. Children with 2 heads, I've seen them with my own eyes, born in the hospitals in the south of Iraq as a result of these weapons of mass destruction used by the United States. The same thing is happening now in the labor rooms, the maternity wards in Fallujah, in the west of Iraq, from the 2003, 4, 5, and 6 bombardment of Fallujah with white phosphorus and other chemical weapons by the United States, whilst the British armed forces held the perimeter so that they could do so. These weapons of mass destruction, in other words, are not weapons that cause devastation here and now and there, but cause devastation here, there, and everywhere, and for generation after generation. That's what a weapon of mass destruction is. And of course, the ultimate weapon of mass destruction is nuclear weapons. And I mean, we're running this campaign, Ban the Bomb, because we think this is the great issue of our time. And we think that the tens, scores of billions of pounds spent on these nuclear weapons could be better spent. Not just, by the way, on hospitals and schools and making life better for our own people, but on real security for our people. We're told that we're spending perhaps £3 billion a year in Britain. I say perhaps because it is a secret. We don't get to know. It's a secret allocation of money, but let's say it's £3 billion on intelligence to protect ourselves from terrorist attack here in Britain. A Trident submarine isn't going to defend you against a terrorist attack, but better intelligence might. Why don't we spend some of the money we're wasting on nuclear weapons on security for our own people? Let's hear from Mohammed, also in the UK. Mohammed, go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum to you, George. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Nice to hear you again, brother.
And you too, sir. How are you? Okay.
Good, by the grace of God.
Inshallah, inshallah. Well, basically, I mean, we should all in Islam, first thing, right? Ayatollah Khomeini said that in Islam there is no place for these kind of a weapon which destroy humanity, right? And these countries have got all these nuclear weapons. Why do they need them? To secure themselves. They are already ruling the world through their banking system and through their pressure on the third world. Look what they're doing with the Muslim countries, right? They are pressurizing these poor countries into submission, and they're making false allegations like there was a 45-minute bomb will be landing in London Central by Saddam Hussein. That was all false allegation against the country, because what it was nothing to do with him coming here, throwing the bomb. It was to do with the oil. It's terrible what it's harmful nuclear weapon should be completely banned from all over the world and all over from these countries, because it's sad, you know, the kids are still, as you said yourself with your speech, the kids are still being born in Hiroshima and Nagasaki disformed, and also in Iraq. They have chucked more nuclear uranium in Iraq in those 3 years through their small doses of bombing than what it was dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And the years and years and years will still, those kids will be born disformed. Why do they need them? Why? It's totally against humanity. And then they talk about peace. We want to make peace, and we don't want to destroy anybody. But they got all these nuclear weapons. Look at Israel, got 200 over maybe 280 or 300 nuclear weapons, and they will not allow anybody to go and inspect them. No. Because what it is, they know they can get away with it.
And look at the double standard, Mohammed. They refuse to sign the NPT. Everyone knows they have plenty of nuclear weapons, but they're treated with a red carpet as paka, kosher, halal regime. Whilst Iran, which has no nuclear weapons, no one claims, even Israel doesn't claim that Iran has any nuclear weapons, yet look at the treatment of Iran. Sanctioned, quarantined, blockaded. in what are effectively acts of war. We're discussing nuclear weapons and where we should start the campaign to get rid of them. I have to go for just 3 short minutes for a short news bulletin. God willing, I'll still be here after that news bulletin. So don't go anywhere at all. Stay tuned to Press TV and come back to comment just 3 minutes from now. Don't go away. You're watching Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. We're talking nuclear weapons. We're asking where we should start, where we should focus in the nuclear disarmament of the world. Here are some of our facts. Israel is the only government in the Middle East to have nuclear weapons. You'd be forgiven if you didn't know that, because nobody ever tells you that. And Israel never acknowledges that and won't sign the nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in order to delimit that. Won't allow a single inspector from the IAEA to come and check that. Whilst Iran, which doesn't have any nuclear weapons, has signed the treaty, does allow the inspectors in, gets sanctioned and blockaded, quarantined. Talk about hypocrisy. Israel has at least 80 nuclear weapons, though the brave whistleblower Mordechai Vanunu, who went to prison for 20 years, most of it in solitary confinement, in order to tell the world 25 years ago said they had in excess of 200 nuclear weapons. And of course in 2008 and in 2009, Israel used weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons on Gaza. On television, live, we all saw it. Some of the weapons landed in the United Nations headquarters, hospitals, clinics and schools. The United Nations didn't do a thing about it. So where should the focus be to rid the world of nuclear weapons? Here's a wise young man, Robert in Peterhead. Robert, welcome to the show.
Very good evening to you, George.
And to you, sir. Go ahead.
Personally, I believe that the nuclear weapons should never have existed in the first place. They exist primarily as tools of persuasion, coercion, suppression, and as a means for big countries to threaten smaller countries, and they have no defence value whatsoever.
None. They're no kind of deterrent, Robert, because if North Korea, God forbid, if North Korea fired its 10 nuclear warheads at Britain, Britain would cease to exist. And so what good would its nuclear weapons have been?
Exactly. And if they get launched, then what are the odds that either side, or indeed any side, is going to survive the blaze? Now, absolutely all nuclear weapons, all of them, should be abolished, no exceptions. But the ones kept hidden from public view and the countries that hide them need to be brought into the light, and they need to be destroyed first. I am, of course, referring to the Zionist state of Israel and its illegal nuclear weapons, which are more than 80 in number, and which puts the lives of millions of people in the Middle East and the wider world at risk. I just want to ask the heads of state that hold nuclear weapons and are currently stockpiling them by the hundreds of thousands, how many more of these doomsday devices, these dead man switches, do we need to create until we realise that one stupid action anywhere in the world from anyone could literally reduce the world to little more than a smouldering rock devoid of any life whatsoever?
Well, that's very powerfully put, and it's right just to accentuate the deadliness of these weapons. This stockpile of 18,600 warheads, at least, that's a conservative figure, because of both Israel and North Korea's secrecy around this issue. That 18,600 nuclear weapons is more than enough to end all human life on this planet and to produce a nuclear winter that would last for thousands of years, in which no plant could grow, no fish could swim, no insect could crawl, nothing. It could end human life entirely and forever. That's pretty high stakes, isn't it? You'd think that would be something that would be grabbing people's attention, keeping their attention, demanding their action. But it's not. They're focused on the country, Iran, that doesn't have any nuclear weapons at all. Now, over 160 countries have demanded that Israel sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But Israel still refuses to cooperate. That's why we're having this debate this evening. As I said, we in Respect are going next week to launch a campaign, Ban the Bomb, and I hope that people will support it. We're demanding a nuclear-free Britain. We're demanding a nuclear-free Middle East. We're demanding a nuclear-free world. Let's go to the comment wall and take some of the traffic that's been coming in. Here's more tweets. Weapons could destroy all capital cities in the world. British weapons alone, British weapons could destroy all the capital cities in the world. Think about it. We have, what did I say, 225 nuclear warheads. Could destroy every capital city on the earth. Just like that. And one more. John Tom says, this fact has dissuaded those who wish to harm the mother of all democracy for a lifetime. I'm really not sure what that means. I'm really not sure who this mother of all democracy is that's being referred to. I really hope it's not the United States of America. I said earlier that Iran had never invaded or occupied anybody else's territory for centuries. The United States has invaded more than 50 countries, 50, in the last 70 years, since the end of the Second World War, and has its nuclear weapons spread out across the globe, has nuclear bases in scores of countries around the globe. Barbara is in Hampshire in England. Let's hear from her. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hello, George. I seem to remember you were arrested many years ago.
I was outside the nuclear weapons base. Barbara, I gave the only interview ever given upside down to the BBC as I was being carried away by four Strathclyde police officers. Go ahead.
I remember. I was in court when, about that time, when Sarah Hipperson was charged with damaging offence at Greenham Common.
Yes.
Now, her defence was that she had committed a crime to prevent a much greater crime, but she was found guilty by the jury. Now, I'm wondering if public opinion would be any different now with the internet.
I think it would be. I think there are far more informed people in our country today than there have ever been in our entire history. Of course, there are still millions, tens of millions of people who are prisoners of the false consciousness which is inculcated in them by our political and media class. But there are more individually informed people in our country than there have ever been. And certainly by the end of our Ban the Bomb campaign, Barbara, I'm hoping there'll be a few more. Now, the action that Sarah took at that time was, I think, to damage one of the United States nuclear warplanes. Am I right?
Right, yes. Mm-hmm.
And who could argue now that committing that small offence to stop a much bigger offence was not an honourable thing to do? Anyway, she'll always be honourable in my eyes. Thanks for that, Barbara, in Hampshire. Craig is in London, on the same subject, of course. Craig, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hello there, you're on the air, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, as you know, there are many people across the world watching Press TV, and I would just like to say that just to find the truth about nuclear weapons in general, and particularly the truth about the Israel-Palestinian conflict and to prove that Israel is the one that is in the right. Follow me on Twitter at Israel for Truth, and I'll make YouTube videos as well about this as well. So thanks for giving me the platform to spread my information at Truth for Israel. Thanks.
I'm not sure what that was all about, but we'll just leave it hanging on the wall. And talking of walls, here on the comment wall, we've got some more stats. US has over 5,000 nuclear warheads, and Britain's nuclear weapons could destroy all the capital cities of the world, as I've been saying. Amal is in Leicester. She's always worth hearing. Amal, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway.
Good evening.
I think if we talk it about, before we talk about the nuclear weapons, what they can do, as a human being, we have to also think about our planet. It's not only us who are living, it's also another living being who are in the planet, and that's also our planet, our daily life, our food. And I don't think there's any more damage what can be done in the Middle East. The Middle East is already destroyed. It's already destroyed in the Middle East. But I am more concerned also about the planet what we are living today, because our planet, you see in disaster what's happening more and more, and that's the creation of the mankind, what we're doing in our planet. And any government or any human being who have a normal brain, he will not develop this type of weapons, but you cannot even destroy them. You cannot even get rid of them. Even after you get rid of them, there will be another damage what they will cause after 10, 20, 50, 60 years.
Well,
and I don't know, those
500 years, 1,000 years.
Yeah, I don't know. These countries who are doing the nuclear weapons, what they are thinking, what they are discussing to get it. But I'm glad that the Iranian government will never do it, and they done it fatwa that they will never do it, and that's what makes me happy. And the rest of them, they are the loser. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Amal. I think we began to lose the line there at the end, but the passion in your voice was very clear, I'm sure, for everyone. Governments with nuclear weapons: United States, Russia, Britain, France, China, Israel, India, Pakistan, and North Korea. You'll note there's no Iran in that list. Governments hosting other people's nuclear weapons: Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey. That surprised me, I must say. I didn't know about the Netherlands, and I didn't know about Italy either. And governments which are in nuclear alliances, which is exactly the same, of course, they are themselves sheltering, they say, behind nuclear weapons. Albania, Australia, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Japan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, South Korea, and Spain. Again, you'll notice there's no Iran on that list. Hans is on the line, if I've read that correctly, in Tehran. Let's go there. Welcome to the show, sir.
Yes, good evening, George.
Good evening.
I support you strongly in campaigning to dismantle all these nuclear weapons, and at the same time, I must say that it's a little bit against historical experience that once weapons were invented, they used them. So it's a terrible situation, especially now when we see all these tensions in the world. Sanctions on Russia, sanctions on Iran since, I don't know, 30, 35 years. When it comes to Iran, I think you're absolutely right. I think they are not, it's not their intention to get the nuclear weapon into their hands, but I think it has nothing, these negotiations, I mean, they try to get Iran onto the knee because America has an open deal with them.
That's
Plus,
right.
Iran is supporting.
Actually, you know that when the tyrant was in power, Hans, when the tyrant was in power in Tehran, the Shah of Persia, the United States spent years trying to persuade him to buy nuclear plants from them. They wanted Iran to develop nuclear power under the Shah, but when the Islamic Republic seeks to build a nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, they blockade it, sanction it, threaten it, and allow their auxiliary in Israel to threaten it. Hans, thanks for the call in Tehran. Mrs. Hussein is on the line in the UK. Welcome, Mrs. Hussein. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, George.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, this is regarding the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So there are two things. First of all, I don't like the idea that why up to now Iran is the member of NPT. Years and years, sanctions and sanctions, and Iran continuously inviting the IAEA people to...
Well, it shows how reasonable they are. I agree with you. I think the Iranian government has been extraordinarily reasonable in going along with all this paraphernalia. I suspect that if I was the leader of Iran, I would have said, you come back and talk to me when you've destroyed Israel's nuclear weapons.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think that's what I would have said. But Iran's leaders have been bending over backwards in order to be reasonable and diplomatic and clear and transparent in the world. And look how they've been treated by these jokers that are around the table negotiating with them. Sorry, Mrs. Hussein, go ahead.
Taking the advantage of it. NPT, the people are coming, IAEA people are coming. Islamic Iran should say, no, enough is enough. Yes, we are going to make a nuclear weapons. So what will you do then?
Well, Iran will never make a nuclear weapon. And the Ayatollah Khomeini had declared that when he was alive, that Iran would never pursue weapons unlimited in space and time, weapons of mass destruction.
But
so
at least,
that's the line. That's the line of the Islamic Republic.
I know, of course. But that is a limit, George. What I mean to say that at least Iran should not be the member of the NPT. At least Iran can do that. Iran should be bold enough to say that I'm not the member of the NPT, and first tell Israel to be member of the NPT. This is the condition Iran should have. Well, and if they don't listen, then they leave it.
They've heard you in Tehran. Thanks, Mrs. Hussein. Shokat's in Manchester in England. Where should the focus be to rid the world of nuclear weapons? Shokat?
Hi there, George. Yeah, I'd like to pose a question, please, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is a country like Saudi Arabia more concerned about Iran developing nuclear weapons rather than Israel, who has nuclear weapons?
I think you know the answer to that, Shokat. Because Saudi Arabia is, objectively speaking, an ally of Israel. And it is an enemy of Iran, because Iran stands up against imperialism. It won't allow any foreigner to occupy its land, to base their armed forces on its land, to cheat the people of their resources and their wealth. Iran is everything that Saudi Arabia is not, and Saudi Arabia is everything that Iran is not. So for those reasons, Saudi Arabia's interests lie with Israel and the United States, according to the criminal kleptocracy that rule Saudi Arabia, not the mass of the people in the country, of course. What do you think, Shokat? Did I get that right? Unfortunately, Shokat is no longer on the line. We're asking, where should the focus be to rid the world of nuclear weapons? Ban the bomb, I say, everywhere. Here, Israel, everywhere in the world. We have to destroy every last nuclear weapon. It must be illegal to possess nuclear weapons, and it should be policed by an impartial International Atomic Energy Agency, so that no country can threaten any other country with annihilation. Because that's what we're talking about here. This is not conventional weaponry, however terrible, conventional weaponry destroys where it lands, and destroys now. It doesn't destroy your children unborn, and their children unborn, and their children unborn, generation after generation. It doesn't drift across an entire country, across borders, across continents. As the wind blows, the radiation, the nuclear dust, we would be, I mean, when they dropped those weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people literally disappeared. I've seen the traces of their being vaporized. I mean, a silhouette of a human being that was once there and then was not there, literally disappeared. Let's go to Angola. We don't often get there. Rafael in Angola, welcome indeed to the show. Go ahead. Yeah,
hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I'm fine, and you?
Very happy to talk to Angola.
I'm blessed to get hooked up with you this night because I've been trying not which of the time, but I always called late. Please, I've been going through the program. I've been following from inception. And like the list of what you were saying, you mentioned the countries, but I will start from the beginning. Like I said earlier when I was interviewed, I say that if all the world powers, like is made mention earlier, could come together and make alliance against each other, that look, this is the perception, so this is the rule you are going to take, you understand me, against this nuclear stuff. And anyone that goes against it, because I don't think it's wrong to destroy the whole nuclear weapon. I mean, everyone should have something to get himself against something. Like, for example, what we call a big man or a great man, if he doesn't have something that a neighbor should be afraid of, you understand me? But there should be a limit. No matter how, call them America or Britain, it's not there. Even Israel should not be a scapegoat. What should be there is this. Look, this is a alliance that should guide each every one of us. You understand me? No one should go contrary to this, and no one should go against this very law. So if Israel could go and constrain against the law, against Palestine or any other country, I mean, there should be a punishment towards them. Now, coming down like what you were saying, I was surprised about this, the countries you mentioned, that you said they have nuclear stuff, and Iran was not mentioned. But I've been following the news all this while. I used to hear about this P+4 stuff, about the Iran. I'm surprised you didn't mention Iran. You said Iran does not have, it doesn't mean that it's not a comprehensive list or what?
Well, I didn't mention Iran because it doesn't have any weapons. Nobody claims that it has any weapons.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are you sure your list is a comprehensive list? Because I follow the news 247. What about this P+4 stuff, nuclear? They have been going all this while, going for nuclear deal.
That's about a nuclear energy industry, which is entirely legal, and every country's right. It's every country's right to have a peaceful nuclear energy industry. No one has the right to interfere in any country developing a nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. And that's all that Iran has done. And it's signed the NPT, and it's allowed the inspectors over and over again to come and roam around the country. We can continue this discussion on Twitter at comment_PressTV. God willing, I'll be here next week for another edition of Comment. Until then, it's been marvelous.
Hello, if it's comment, take the name and the question with that number. And just make sure the site your television volume set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me to the phone number and then we'll call you back. Comment.